down on the hood of your car, the windshield of your car. Not good news. All right, we've got thunderstorms out there now, and these are producing hail. Severe stuff is in northeast Texas, also into the state of Alabama, looking at areas west and southwest of Montgomery. Let's start with this one. Ping pong ball size hail out of Cass, Harrison, and Marion County. So we're looking at Hughes Springs and Jefferson and Lone Star in the path. You can see for a moment that white core on that storm. So again, very large hail. This has a strong updraft capable of holding up those larger stones. So again, ping pong ball size hail, that's going to do a number on your vehicle, and it is crossing some local roadways. Eventually I-49 will be in play. This is staying generally to the north right now of I-20, but eventually if this does hold together, it holds its strength, it maintains that strong updraft, we could be looking at I-49, even I-20 in play farther down the line. Again, hail estimates 1.5-inch diameter, so ping pong ball size hail, golf ball size hail, certainly a possibility out of this storm. Nesbitt, 12:12 will be your arrival time. Jasper Heights at 12:21. Scottsville at 12:26. So if you're in these areas, and especially if you've got a few minutes, as Mike said, grab that vehicle, put it under cover, bring in the pets. If kids are out playing in the backyard, practicing baseball, everybody needs to be inside because you don't want to be out there when these hailstones start coming down. Here into the state of Alabama, we've got, again, $quarter to $half size hail. What to be watching for. Also gusty winds in excess of 60 miles an hour. This one's Wilcox County. This is to the east of Thomasville right now, so headed towards Pine Hill and Yellow Bluff in the short term. Eventually down the line heading towards Chestnut, and you can see 65 would eventually be in play for this storm as well. Today that risk extends all along our stalled frontal boundary, but again, higher likelihood back into portions of Texas where this afternoon we think things reload. So we had storms to start the day around Dallas. Got to watch for those areas. Again, Dallas to Waco, the I-35 corridor likely to be active later on. And it was a stormy, severe thunderstorm warnings and flash flood warnings, in some cases like all on top of one another across sections of the west. Storm reports, you can see they were lined up really right along the I-25 corridor. Sections of the Intermountain West also got in on some of that activity. And right now we're continuing to see some of that rain north of the Denver area, even some high elevation snow into the Rockies, with thunderstorms beginning to develop farther into southern and western sections of Colorado, northern New Mexico, and back into sections of Idaho and Wyoming as well. When we look at the severe risk today, not quite as potent into parts of Colorado, but we're still watching a little bit of Colorado and a little bit of New Mexico, more in play across the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, and then of course back through southwestern sections of Oklahoma. But we timed this out for you so you can see how things get going. Of course, we've got the action that we see right now on the radar. Notice ahead of that, that's where things really get firing. So instability builds by mid-late afternoon. That's when we see those big towering thunderstorms take off. I think we see them develop more into a complex or a cluster by the later evening hours and into the overnight. These could still bring some huge hailstones and, again, some gusty, damaging winds. Watch for repeated rounds of rain in some communities. That would prompt flash flooding, or again, just a prolific thunderstorm bringing heavy rain to areas that already saw it yesterday. So the atmosphere, or rather the soil, is primed for the atmosphere to dump that moisture on it. We could see more flash flooding in these areas. So through tomorrow morning, it is that I-25 corridor that has a higher risk of flash flooding, Mike, coming on the heels of obviously all the rain they saw yesterday. What was it like? I think in 3 hours, some of these spots saw 3-4+ inches of rain.
It was really incredible. Some of the
see the feed of moisture back into sections of the upper Great Lakes. But look at this thing wound up, again, like a cinnamon roll. Sometimes this time of day, I always like to look at the weather as food. And there's that rain wrapped up from parts of Canada through the Ohio Valley, back up through eastern sections of Wisconsin, and then again up here into Canada, where they are loving seeing some rain shower and cloud cover activity because of all the fires, of course, that were making headlines either side of the border last week. Marquette, Green Bay, Madison, Chicago, all reporting rain, generally light to moderate rain. It's keeping temperatures on the cooler side. So, maybe by mid-June standards, you're like, this isn't ideal. Mid-50s for Marquette and Green Bay, low 60s for Madison and Chicago. Little milder farther to the south. Cedar Rapids and Peoria, both close to or at 80 degrees with a little bit more sunshine. So on the southwest side of that low, you're getting a little bit more sunshine and some more warmth. But into sections of the northeast, we've got a little bit of rain headed into parts of western PA, western New York. But notice across the eastern seaboard, even Syracuse, temperatures are mild. We've got low to mid 70s for many of these areas, save for eastern Massachusetts. Massachusetts. Boston, you're a little cooler. But as that system continues to pivot off towards the east, we see a little bit more rain make its way into parts of the Northeast and New England. But, Mike, the heftiest of rain would be focused through western PA and Ohio.
Alex, thank you for that.
Got to bring in the pets and, of course, animals. They need cover as well. Big story also across Texas is going to be heat coming our way this week, and we're talking about some major heat. Now, for a place like Austin, when we talk about 100-degree days, the average first triple-digit day would come on July 7th. So we're not crazy early, but still, we're almost a month early. Year to date, this time last year, we'd actually already had 6 days of 100-degree or greater temperature. So 2022 was a hot year. Obviously, 2023, we're still waiting on that first triple-digit day. Hint, it's in the cards for us this week. Now, the 30-year average for annual triple-digit or greater days is 31. So on average, we would expect 31 days throughout a calendar year that we get in on that kind of high heat. Where are we headed this week? Well, for a place like Corpus Christi, highs will be approaching records today. 95 the forecast. The record is 97. Del Rio, you're within a few degrees of record. Same for San Antonio and for Brownsville. Now, I think all will fall short today. That's not going to be the case through the rest of the week. San Antonio, we do talk about that combination of heat and then the dew point, so the measure of moisture in the air. That gives us a value known as the heat index. That's how it feels, and that's what really becomes dangerous because your body cools itself by sweating. When the air is really humid, you can't sweat as effectively. So when we get those really hot, humid days, they become more dangerous to your health. So today, we're getting into that dangerous territory by the late afternoon and evening hours with feels like or heat index values in the 106 to 108 range. So again, very, very hot. This is not one of those days you want to go for that jog right after work. And I would even wait with the dogs. Don't take them for that walk right at 5:30. You know, I know my dog waits at the door and she's like, all right, let's go. But hang in there. Say, let's do like 8 or 9 o'clock once those temperatures come down, because you got to also think of the pavement on their feet. San Antonio, we are headed up and away. We've got 103 on Thursday, Mike, 104 Friday, 106 by the end of the weekend.
All right, Alex, thanks.
Weather Underground. Got some big storms here today in our country. I'm Alex Wilson here with Mike Bettis, Dr. Nab with us as well.
Yeah, we're going to have some wind. We're definitely going to have some hail as well. Starkville, Mississippi. Let's start there.
That has been issued, I should say, for portions of Texas, for parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. This includes Texarkana, Shreveport, Mount Pleasant, Tyler, Monroe, and areas just to the north of Alexandria. So corridors there along I-20 and I-49 are watching and bracing for severe weather that's really imminent in some of these areas. So Bossier and Caddo Parish under a severe thunderstorm warning. We've got Cass, Harrison, and Marion counties in the state of Texas. So it's going to be moving out of those counties into the state of Louisiana. Blanchard and Greenwood, some of the communities that are in the path of this, as well as Oil City. Now, this storm has produced ping-pong ball-sized hail. I don't think the hail core looks quite as significant as it did earlier. So earlier in the hour, we were looking at that hail greater than 2 inches in diameter. At this point, I think we're probably between like 1 and 1.5 inches. Now, at latest check, you can see around quarter-size hail. That's still going to be damaging hail. So that is still severe criteria hail. That could still put some dings in your car hood. And if enough of it comes down, you could still deal with some dents or even some windows break-in that'll cause you all sorts of expenses. Today, it is once again that stalled front, instability building underneath or south of that front that's going to help to really fuel those storms to get going. So the front provides the lift. Of course, the daytime heating gives us that heat of moisture courtesy of the Gulf of Mexico. It's all there, and it's all going to be working for us to get those spicier thunderstorms. So it's not just these areas that we've got to watch, but we're also going to be watching, Mike, this afternoon. I think that Dallas to Waco corridor, we woke up to a very soggy start to the day. This will be stormy once again as the afternoon wears on.
And joining us now, Wyatt Warneth. He's a spokesperson for American Lifeguard Association. Wyatt, always good to talk to you. How desperate is the situation right now for lifeguards, and what's the reason we can't find lifeguards?
Well, I must tell you, 10 of those drownings were right here on this beach in Brevard.
Temptation's going to be there as temperatures heat up for people to go to these beaches that are unattended, and that's when they get themselves into trouble, correct?
You know, your chances of drowning in front of a lifeguard are 1 in 18 million.
Don't know how to swim. Is that one of the reasons that we're dealing with such a lifeguard shortage, or is it, you know, people who usually were taking those lifeguard jobs, like those of us in high school or college, are now seeking internships? What's responsible for this huge drop in numbers?
Well, let's back up in history.
Educating future lifeguards key. You also pointed out that educating yourself before you go on a trip is so important. Where do we go to find out about the availability of guarded beaches? If I'm planning a trip, how do I find out that that area is going to be more secure?
Well, most city governments have an online.
He's always great. He makes a great point, though. We've got to, get people again interested in it. It's a great career, and you are truly making a difference,
You are
saving lives.
people's lives, no doubt about that.
All right.
Warmer and warmer at America's beaches, but it's not just at the beaches, it's actually much of the Atlantic Basin.
Absolutely. So when we look at sea surface temperature departures well above normal, those are making headlines and really dropping jaws, especially as we look towards what's going to happen here in Atlantic hurricane season. We know that warm ocean waters are responsible for a lot of Atlantic hurricane development, but we also know it's an El Nino year, and that typically suppresses development.
So how do
where do we go?
how do the two work together or combat each other, right? Let's bring in our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knapp. Unprecedented sea surface temperatures for this time of year, Dr. Knapp. Is there something to glean out of that? Does that potentially mean a more active hurricane season?
Potentially, but the El Nino versus the warm Atlantic waters is going to be an epic battle in the atmospheric ocean system in a way we've never really seen before. And the stakes keep going up. As we've watched this winter and this spring, we've seen the waters continuing to get warmer and warmer in the Central and East Pacific as El Nino approaches, but we've also been seeing the Atlantic waters getting warmer and warmer. So both sides have been getting warmer. Now, let's first talk about the Pacific side. We're pretty confident that we've got a robust El Nino coming. We've already got El Nino. Most of the modeling suggests it'll become a moderate to strong El Nino. The stronger the El Nino gets, the more it would have an effect on lessening Atlantic hurricane activity. But we've never had a robust El Nino and record warm temperatures on the Atlantic side. What is going on over here?
These numbers, again, making headlines. A lot of people talking about these going, can't even really fathom. I mean, when we look at averages, we're way above that.
Yeah, this is record-setting warmth overall in the Atlantic Basin. We've never had a year. The waters of the Atlantic are warmer this year than in 2010, 2005, 2020 and 21. I mean, this is really serious stuff if that was the only thing going on, right? And you also notice that in the deep tropical Atlantic, things are way above average. So this is record-setting Atlantic warmth. So if you just look at El Nino, you'd think, well, this is going to be a below average year. If you just look at the Atlantic side, you think, well, man, that fuel is going to be an above average year. But why is the Atlantic behaving the way it is? Because we've never had a robust El Nino with record-setting warm Atlantic waters. The Atlantic waters are not warming because of El Nino. They're warming because of what's going on in the atmosphere. We've had a weaker than average subtropical high pressure system for most of the spring. And when you weaken that high as part of a negative phase of what's called the North Atlantic Oscillation, that weaker high weakens the trade winds. And when you weaken the trade winds, you don't mix up the ocean as much. You don't bring cooler water from below. You don't have as much evaporation. And so the sun angle that gets higher and higher warms up the waters more than usual. And there's the related thing is we've had less Saharan dust coming off of Africa. So without that dust in the middle levels of the atmosphere to absorb the sunlight's getting through to warm the ocean even more. The dust concentrations are record low.
Yeah.
You mentioned weaker trade winds. Would that correspondingly mean maybe a lower wind shear environment, which would cause maybe more potential development?
Yes, that's one thing that is not what you usually see in El Nino. El Nino, you usually have a lot of sinking, and you have a stronger high pressure in the Atlantic, and you have stronger trade winds and stronger wind shear. So that's where it's not just a battle in the ocean, it's a battle in the atmosphere. Will El Nino cause that high pressure to strengthen and strengthen the trade winds and lower the sea surface temperatures? It's going to be quite a battle, but we've never had this combination before. The two recent big El Ninos, 2015, 2009, we had a strong Atlantic high. We did not have robust Atlantic warm temperatures. So we haven't had this combination since 1957.
Wow.
Right? And that was a year when we had an opposite of 2004. 2004, El Nino, warm Atlantic, but it wasn't a robust El Nino. You got to go back to 57 to have a year quite like this.
So that's why this has been such a challenging forecast for this year's season.
Yeah, a robust El Nino with record-setting warm Atlantic. Even 1957 wasn't like that. So when you don't have a year we've ever seen before, it makes the seasonal forecast really tough.
Seriously.
Oh, man. Thanks, Dr. Knapp. Well, coming up, our coverage continues on the Weather Channel.
Coming up here on Weather Underground, millions of people are in that bullseye for severe storms today.
Yeah.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis.
I'm Alex Wilson, our expert, Dr. Nab, in the house. We've got some tropics to talk about, but some heat, a lot of storms. That's really making headlines throughout the week.
Yeah, I think the star player in all of this is the ocean. I mean, the Gulf of Mexico, which is warmer than average, as we'll talk about, really supplying the South with all the fuel it needs for all these storms for the next several days.
Storms could come at multiple times of the day, too, which could be very dangerous.
We started off the day with storms in Dallas. We could see more thunderstorms later today. So I think a lot of times people see a round of storms and they go, goodness, I'm so glad that's over for the day. Not the case.
I think in the South, we're going to end up seeing some video of hail covering streets and then flowing down the street because there's been a lot of rain. There's going to be some larger than usual hail down south.
Okay, so 3 maps you see behind us: the thunderstorm threat zone, the hail threat, the wind threat, and for a lot of you between I-20 and I-10, heads up today.
All right, take a look at what we saw yesterday. Go-kart that you would be launching from the car. It was spiky, right? I mean, this wasn't just like a nice little softball. It was a spike-filled, like, just car bomb. The person whose roof it fell on said it sounded like a bomb went off. Can you imagine that? Again, coming from the cloud and hitting your roof, hitting your car, hopefully not hitting you. Again, it's so important to get inside today when these storms are rolling through. We've got severe weather right now into parts of Alabama, Louisiana, and northeast Texas. So we've still got our stalled frontal boundary. And as Dr. Nab mentioned, ocean helping us out. In this case, the Gulf of Mexico providing all of that moisture. And we've got temperatures on the rise across the region. Shreveport, you are in the mix right now with a severe storm. So we've got Bossier, Caddo, and Webster counties here under the severe thunderstorm warning. This includes I-49 and I-20. We've got another storm trailing that's been producing hail. I think both of these capable of bringing you at least quarter-sized hail, and then the gusty, damaging wind potential. It'll be, again, one after another for Shreveport. So as this one exits, the next one comes in stage left. So, again, don't let your guard down and think, okay, things are lightening up, I'm going to go back outside. No, you got to let both of these pass through. Right now, any of the hail is on the east side of Shreveport. It has been lessening, that hail core, so not quite as potent as it was on the west side of town, but still, I think we're at least getting littered with some dime to nickel sized hail there along 220 and 20. Farther to the north and west, again, we've got our next warning. That'll be moving out of Texas into the state of Louisiana shortly. We take you to Mississippi, where Rankin County is under a severe thunderstorm warning until 1:15 local time. Portions of I-20 getting drenched. Really the worst of it, though, to the south of I-20. That's where I think gusty winds are going to approach you guys shortly around and north of Puckett. When we look at the severe thunderstorm potential, you can see it's really elongated because that's where that stalled frontal boundary is. Dallas started the day with thunderstorms. This afternoon and evening, more thunderstorms along the I-35 corridor. So Dallas to Waco, I think a prime location again for hail, gusty, damaging winds, possible tornadoes. And again, coming on the heels of last night's big hail around the Dallas metro. You don't love to see that, right? You don't want to see, your already dented car see worse problems. And again, we've got to talk about the possibility for some flash flooding, too, because now we're dealing with the rounds of rain. Damaging wind threat across the board, hail threat most likely across sections of I-35, but anywhere in that white outlined area where we could see hail 2 inches, that's egg-sized hail or greater. So Dr. Nab pointed out parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even South Georgia could get in on some very large hail today. And I did tell us it was active across the Intermountain West, but especially there from that stretch in Colorado, northeast New Mexico, and then back down into Texas, where there was plenty of hail and water issues. Right now, we've got a few thunderstorms well to the north of Denver, really along the Wyoming-Colorado line, and then areas into south and west Colorado. Intermountain West also beginning to light up with a little more thunderstorm activity. I think the worst of the weather would be focused east of where the action is now. So, yeah, the garden variety thunderstorms, those are going to continue through the afternoon across parts of Utah and New Mexico and Colorado. But the spicy stuff, the severe threat, that's going to get us into western Oklahoma, panhandle of Texas, and then through south and west Oklahoma, and then along the Gulf Coast as well, with our frontal boundary still nearby. So, again, future radar already picking up on what we're seeing now. Watch these areas. As the afternoon wears on, things light up there in northeast sections of New Mexico, extreme southeast Colorado, drift into Oklahoma, the Texas Panhandle, and eventually western Oklahoma. I think big hail, gusty, damaging winds, more of a complex or cluster by the later evening and overnight hours, and that'll also bring some heavy rain to places like Oklahoma City and northern and central sections of Oklahoma. So we've got to watch for possible flash flooding. I'd be most concerned, though, in those areas that are going to see a less severe, but just some thunderstorm activity. Again, that I-25 corridor and points to the east, Mike, these areas were absolutely drenched yesterday, so it's not going to take much to lead to more water problems today.
Another
up if you see something. So if you're, at the store and you see a child unattended in a car or a pet unattended in a car, don't be afraid to speak up and talk to the store manager or someone in the parking lot. All right, water vapor imagery. Here is what's going on right now. Can you spot the low? You don't need much time, do you? Nope. You can see that moisture working all the way back into it out of the Atlantic, and this is wrapped up. There's our low curled up over the Great Lakes. That is keeping things cloudy, keeping things a little cooler, and bringing us some showers, even a few thunderstorms right near the center of the low. So where we've got that cold pocket aloft, we've got some of those thunderstorms. Wouldn't be surprised to see maybe some small hail out of these as well. We look towards Marquette, Green Bay, Madison, Chicago. Temperatures are cool in the 50s and low 60s in these areas, and most are reporting at least light to moderate rain. It hasn't been particularly heavy rain today, but rain to, make it a little dreary outside. A good nap day if you find yourself off work on Tuesdays. Again, parts of lower Michigan between Saginaw and Detroit, that's where we've got some of those thunderstorms. Northeast areas, you're a little milder, so set off to the east of the low. We've got 70s, mid-70s in New York and Philly. We've got 70 in Chatham, Scranton 72, Syracuse 71. But that low is going to pivot off towards the east, and so we will see that stretch of rain set up across sections of Ohio, northern West Virginia, western PA, and then west and central New York. Also, some of the higher elevations through New England could see some 1 to 2 inch rainfall totals. The rest of the area looking at an inch or less by the time all is said and done. So let's see how this times out for you. By the time we get into this evening, now more of that rain focused into Ohio, western PA, Panhandle, northern Panhandle of West Virginia, a place like Morgantown. You'll also see some of that rain by tomorrow morning. Now we've got I-81 from Syracuse to Binghamton to Scranton. We've got I-80 in Pennsylvania, sections of the New York State Thruway getting in on the rain, and by tomorrow afternoon, New England in the mix. So you can see very clearly that low pivots, and then we've got another round of rain coming back around through for the end of the week. So we're going to keep things a little dreary here across our northeastern cities. The good news is, Mike, a lot of these areas could use the rain. Moderate drought for those areas in that sand color.
Alex, thank you for that.
Or you paint it white and you just be like a golf ball sponsor.
You could do
You're
that.
Just like, look, I'm a like a putt-putt course. You're just like, hey, look, it's the official vehicle, and you make money off of it.
Yeah, why not?
Turn that lemon into lemonade. Look at some of these hail reports, though, just over the last 24 hours. 4-inch diameter hail. So as Mike said, that's softball, and it wasn't like perfectly round and nice like a softball. They had like spikes. It was a mess out there. So Burleson and Cedar Hill, you had that. Granbury, 2.5-inch. Mansfield, 2 3/4 inch. And in Balch Springs, we had 2-inch diameter hail. So we look at what's happening out there this afternoon. More opportunities for hail. In fact, I think it's likely that we see hail through tonight. So not much right now on the radar, but through the afternoon. That's why Mike said, think about where you're going to be and check the radar before you leave work. I know, like, the idea of staying at work for half hour or an hour later, you're like, absolutely not. I will drive through hail, but trust me, you don't necessarily want to. And it's also likely that we see those hailstones exceed 2 inches in diameter. So here's the timing for us. I think for a lot of you, the good news is you may already be home from work before the worst of those storms come in. It's an overnight threat. So this is something to think about with those parking lots. If you live in an apartment complex and you like to normally park outside because it's right in front of the apartment, you may want to go to the parking garage. And again, tomorrow's morning commute could still be a little active.
Thanks, Alex. A lot more